engine we adore is a really useful engine, you know, 'cause the fat controller, he told him so. Now he's got a punchline to call his very own. He's the really useful engine we adore. He's the one. He's the number one. Thomas the Tank Engine. He's the really useful engine we adore.
One day, Henry was on his way towards Brendam Docks to collect the flying Kipper, and as he got there, he noticed two trains waiting for him on his left, and Henry didn't know which train is which. "Porter, Salty," he asked, "which one of these is my train, the flying Kipper?" The two engines looked over the two trains. They were uncertain. I'm not too sure," replied Salty. "We were so busy shunting freight cars that we didn't get a chance to look." Just then Hank puffed in. "Howdy, y'all. I'm here for my train full of cheese. And I can see that it's ready and waiting for me over there." Hank," stammered the porter, "I think you should wait for a little while." "Why wait? I'll be late if I do." Hank turned around and coupled up to one of the trains, and he set off with it in tow. "I guess that's your train over there," said Murdoch. "I guess so too," replied Henry. "Thank you, Porter and Salty." "As always," they both replied. And with that, Henry pulled out of Brendam Docks with his train. Meanwhile, as Hank arrived at Napper Station to drop off his first delivery, Duck and Neville were nearby, and they began to smell something very funny and strange. "Neville," asked Duck, "what's that smell?" "I don't know," replied Neville, "but it smells like fish. And it's coming from Hank's train over there. I think he's pulling the flying Kipper instead of Henry." "Well, I thought Henry pulls the flying Kipper usually, but this is something new for the first time. Do you think we should tell the others about this?" "I think so," replied Duck. "I mean, I never even heard of Hank pulling the flying Kipper, or even see him pulling it either. So yeah." That night, Henry arrived back at Timothy's sheds until Percy spoke up. "Excuse me, Henry," he asked. "Why was Hank pulling the flying Kipper instead of you?" This made Henry confused. "What do you mean, Percy?" "Well, Henry," replied Edward, "Doc and Neville told him that Hank was pulling the flying Kipper instead of you, and then he told me about it." "Was there a mix-up or something?" This made Henry even more confused, so confused that he didn't want to reply, so he just puffed away to go to sleep somewhere else. Henry decided to stay at the brown turntable at Tidmouth, where he found Duck, Neville, and Hank already there. "All right," said Henry suspiciously to Neville and Duck. "What were you two trying to pull?" "What are you talking about?" asked Duck. "You guys think that Hank was pulling the flying Kipper, even though it was really me who was pulling it." Hank was now confused. "Me? Pulling the flying Kipper today? I wasn't pulling the flying Kipper. I was pulling a different train full of cheese." "Well, Hank," said Neville, "as you stopped by while we're nearby, we got the smell from your freight cars, and it definitely smelled like fish. And you know, cheese and fish have different smells." "I agree," said Duck, "so we don't believe you. You two were definitely pulling different trains, or probably get them mixed up." "I guess you two weren't paying attention on what you're doing." "We were," protested Hank. "I don't know what is going on. I'm like super confused now." "We gotta get to the bottom of this, and I think I know who to ask." "Cranky," cried Henry. "He was the one who loaded our freight cars before we arrived." "Correctamundo. Let's say we go to Brendam Docks and ask him first thing tomorrow morning." The next morning, Henry and Hank entered Brendam Docks where they found Cranky had just woken up. "Cranky," inquired Hank, "mind if we ask you something? What were we loading into our freight cars yesterday?" Why, cheese and fish, of course. Why do you ask? And then Henry and Hank told Cranky about yesterday. So we were wondering that if you might have mixed up our loads. Cranky wasn't certain. Well, the barrels, boxes, and crates were all sealed up, so I didn't get a chance to look what's inside. Sorry. Well, thanks anyway, replied Hank. I knew it, chuckled Duck as he puffed by. You two just got your trains mixed up. Then an idea flew into Henry's funnel. I got it. I have an idea. Then what's that? Why wouldn't we ask as many engines as we could about this? And this made Hank believe that that was a great idea. Henry decided to stop by Vickerstown Station to ask other engines. Excuse me, but haven't you heard something about between Hank and the Flying Kipper? Oh yes, replied Boko. Hank came by here to drop off one of his deliveries, and I was able to smell the stench of the fish from his trucks. Same here, agreed Daisy, and it was definitely bad for my swerves. And Duck and Neville told us before Hank came by, added Arthur. In fact, corrected Dennis, they actually told everyone around the island about this. They sure did, agreed Boko and Daisy at the same time. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, Hank rolled into Knapford Yard and began telling the other engines there about what happened yesterday. And they were also told by Duck and Neville, making them believe that he was the one pulling the Flying Kipper. That afternoon, Henry and Hank were unable to solve their mystery of the unidentified Flying Kipper as Donald puffed in, with Douglas falling from behind. You know something, said Douglas. On what Duck and Neville said about yesterday, we think it's false. False? What are you talking about, Douglas? Asked Henry. You see, replied Donald, as we are working over the coaling plant, as Hank arrived and stopped by with his train, and we also got a smell as well, but it wasn't actually fish. Instead, it was actually a rare kind of cheese that smells like fish. Mink and Duck and Neville, who had napping nearby, believed that Hank's train was full of fish. So you see, finished Donald, they got it all wrong. Henry and Hank were speechless. My goodness, said Henry quietly. It seems that we weren't pulling the correct trains. Well, I guess that solves our mystery, chuckled Hank. We were very happy to help, chuckled Douglas. That's what friends are for. And we appreciate it, replied Henry. Thank you. But on the downside, though, Neville and Duck already told everyone around Soda about this. Not to worry, chuckled Donald. We actually told Tom Hatt about this, and later on, added Douglas, he'll tell everyone else. This made Henry and Hank very happy and also very relieved. And so by the next day, all of the engines of Soda began to realize that it was all just a rumor, and instantly forgot about it. And of course, for starting it all, Duck and Neville decided to apologize to Henry and Hank, and they immediately accepted their apologies. And Duck and Neville learned their lessons to be careful on what they're thinking or saying, even before doing so. Otherwise, something like a big rumor could occur.